So we're going live there. Turn that up. Hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast. My name is Michael, and we are here tonight for Detention Live with my special guest co-host, Jessica, who I believe is AngryNerd03 on the Twitter sphere. Jessica, say hello to everyone.
Hi. Nice to meet y'all.
Yeah, very, very happy to have you here, especially because I had to cancel on you. You were supposed to be here last week, and then sort of the last minute, I'm dealing with a bunch of crazy medical stuff, and I was like, I'm not able to do this. And then it just by happenstance, Tom, who normally would be streaming right now, his 5e game had to cancel. So like, hey, let's just see if we can squeeze it in. You were available, Kismet, it all works together. So very excited to be able to have you on tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So for anyone who is watching now or in the future who may not be familiar with what you do within the TTRPG sphere, give us a little bit about your background. Who are you?
I write games and supplements. I guess I'm a game designer. That's what I do. Yeah, I wrote for the Uncaged Anthology. Right now I have some stuff coming out with Age of Sigmar Soulbound, some Warhammer Fantasy stuff later this year, and some stuff with Pugmire, and a lot of stuff on the DM's Guild.
Oh, anything in particular on DM's Guild you'd like to highlight? Anything new?
I have a new thing coming out next week.
Oh, nice.
Talk about during plugs.
Okay.
But I produced Book of Seasons, Solstices and Equinoxes, which was nominated for an Emmy and is right over my shoulder, if you can see it. So those are 2 books you can get on DM's Guild. Plus, I have a whole bunch of games that I've created entirely myself that are much cheaper than anything you can get on DM's Guild of my stuff on my itch page. Those are like $1 to $5.
Oh, very, very cool. And then if you don't mind, just through Twitter or email, if you'll send me a links to all those things when I do the YouTube show notes and the audio
Absolutely.
only, I'll throw everything in there for you. All right, so the first thing we like to do here is basically the extracurricular, and that's just where we talk about what we've been up to recently. So it can be a book you've read, a CD you're listening to, a movie, literally just anything that you feel like sharing with us. So is there anything going on right now that you want to talk about for a minute?
Oh, I just took 2 weeks off of work, which was great.
Oh, nice.
To catch up on my writing work, my other work. In the real life, I'm a social worker, trauma therapist. So I took 2 weeks off from seeing clients. And in addition to writing, I was playing a lot of Hades. I started watching iZombie. And just today, I finished reading the 3rd book in the Dune series, Children of Dune.
Okay.
So that's what I've been up to.
That's a lot. That's a full schedule for a couple weeks. That's a lot going on. So I've actually, Dune is one of those like holes in my nerd cred. I know about it, but I don't know. I've never read any of the books. I did not see the original movie. I know there's a new one coming out. I probably will check that one out because I have HBO Max. But I really don't know. There's like the spice and there's the giant sandworms, but beyond that, I don't know much.
I had never read any of the Dune stuff either, but saw the trailer for the new movie. And I'm a big David Lynch fan, so it was weird to me that I hadn't seen the old movie, but I like to read the books first. So I decided to read the first book, then see the David Lynch movie. And then I heard from some people that it all goes downhill after the first book. And other people were like, no, it gets better after the first book. So I read the next 2. I've read the first trilogy now, and I don't know if I'm going to continue.
Okay.
But we'll see. They're all like 600 pages. So it's like I get them from the library and I have 20 days to read them. So I have to like commit.
Right. Yeah, I recently started rereading the Wheel of Time series. And I think I've already mentioned...
That's one I've never finished.
Okay. Well, I mentioned this. Mentioned this a while back, so I'm repeating it a little bit. But I read, I mean audiobook. I think I got through like the first 7 really quickly, and then I got to that part where they kind of get bad, and I couldn't continue. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm done. And so I switched over, and now I'm going through the Dark Tower series again, which I have not read since the new ones came out. And I read them all. I've read the old ones many, many, many times. but I read each of the new ones once. So I'm about halfway through the Wastelands right now. And I think Drawn to the Three and Wastelands are two of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely love those.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't read a lot of Stephen King, so I should maybe give those a shot. I've read like his short stories.
Yeah, I'm actually a really big King fan. Though, I mean, I lean into his own, he talks about himself as he's like the McDonald's of writing. Like it's it's not, maybe not good for you. It's not highbrow, but it's quick, easy. It's fun. It's like beach reading. And it's one of the ways I got into fantasy. It's one of his early books is called Eyes of the Dragon, which is kind of a weird, he doesn't really do fantasy genre very much, but he did that book. I happened to read it and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I don't know if that was like the first book I ever read fantasy, but it was one of the earliest books. And it really kind of had an impact on me. And I really, really enjoyed that one. I haven't read it in 30 years, so it may be terrible. But at the time, I really liked it.
I love that.
All right. So very quick, I just want to say hello to Sumkey. He's one of my regulars who watches me play Dragon Warrior during the morning. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. And the New York Tater, who is one of our Detention All-Stars. This is no lie. For a long time, Detention kind of went away. It was just, I moved, and where I'm at now, I have terrible internet problems. And we were trying it for a little while after I moved, and my internet kept crashing. I got really frustrated. So I just stopped doing it for a while. And he kept bugging me about Detention. So New York Tater is the reason why Detention is back. So whether that is praise to him or condemnation, I don't know. But I always like it when he hangs out with us. So as for me, a couple of things I already mentioned. I'm creating my own game right now.
That's awesome.
Dipping my toes into the game creation. I've been working on a game for a couple of years, mostly as like a joke. But it actually started to become fun.
So I feel like all of my games start as a joke.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm literally on record, D12 is the best die. I think rolling a D12 is just the most physically satisfying of all the dice. I just think they're great and not enough people use them. So I started this game that was just, how can I get people to roll a ton of D12s? Like that's everything I went to is like, well, you have to roll like 5 of them. And then after a little while, I kept paring back some of the stupid parts and leaving the other parts. And it turned out this is actually a lot of fun to do.
That's awesome.
So now I've hired a project manager, and we are hoping to bring it to Kickstarter later this year. So that's super exciting. But I did a play test last night with like a new framing device. It may make more sense if you're a game designer. The rules didn't really change, but the way I presented everything did. And it went really well. But I almost had to like start over because I had like 80% of a game written that was more like a TV show, but it was supposed to be about movies. So just some of the framing device, like we kept falling naturally into language like, this is our cold open, this is the commercial break, here's this. But the whole premise is it's supposed to be an action movie. And so now I'm like, okay, well, this is Act 1. This is our inciting incident. This is our, rising tension. Here's our climax. So I'm having to just change a few things to make it really fall into what I was supposed to be doing. But in a weird way, I have 2 games now. So if this one goes well, I can always just go back and go, okay, here's the lower decks version of the game, which actually might work as well. And then I watched.
Cool. I'll keep an eye out for that.
Well, I would be fantastic at some point. We're going to be hiring people to help, additional writing and development. Tracy's the one who's doing all that. He's the project manager. I hired Tracy Bennett. Oh my God, I forgot Tracy. The other Tracy on Twitter. What is his last name? Their last name. Sorry. Oh God. Sorry, Tracy. I don't know why. For some reason, I cannot remember your name. But they are the one that are doing the development for me and project managing. So they'll be the one hiring additional people. But I'm excited.
That's awesome.
It is Barnett. Okay, I thought it was, but then I started thinking, wait, that's wrong. So thank you, Sumkey, for the assist there. And then quickly, I did watch the Snyder Cut, the 4-hour DC movie.
How was that?
I did not care for it at all.
Okay.
I don't really like Man of Steel. In fact, I would say I hate Man of Steel. I really dislike Batman versus Superman. I thought the Joss Whedon Justice League was very bad. But knowing what happened with Zack and why he had to leave the project, he had a tragedy with his family, I was actually happy that he got a chance to finish it. Whatever you think of, whatever else, it's just, I was happy for him just, on an emotional level. Having said that, it's a very bad movie in my opinion. In fact, I think the Joss Whedon version's better. And I'm pretty much a minority in that because I don't think it's any better than the Joss version, but it's 2 hours shorter. So if you're going to make me watch one of them, I'm going to pick the Joss version every time because it's just so much shorter, but they're both really dumb. But Zach is a great cinematographer. It looks amazing. It looks like candy. You want to like lick the screen, these poses and these images. But the moment you start listening to what the characters are saying and trying to pay attention to what they're doing and why, it does not make any sense whatsoever.
I mean, I know, so I'm not a Zack Snyder fan. I'm also not a Michael Bay fan.
Oh, okay.
But something I always give them credit for is you can look at like 10 seconds of one of their movies and know that it's them.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that with Tim Burton too. So, like, I am a fan of his early work.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's something to say for having a recognizable style. And Zack Snyder does make very cool cinematic pictures.
Mm-hmm. I would love to have a room full of posters from his movies.
Mm-hmm.
But just no dialogue. Yeah. None of that.
It'd be cool to have like on in the background at a bar or something.
Yeah, I mean, just when you look up, you're like, "Whoa, that was awesome!" There's like that iconic Batman stand on top of a gargoyle with a lightning behind him. It's like that looks amazing. But if you start asking, like, why was he actually there at that moment, other than to get that pose, there's really no reason for them to be there.
Yeah, I was really disappointed by Man of Steel. So the only DC Heroes movies I've seen have been the 2 Wonder Woman movies and then the Harley Quinn Birds of Prey movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that one, and I really liked the first Wonder Woman movie.
Yeah. I thought the first 2/3 of the first Wonder Woman movie are amazing. That last third is terrible. And I have heard, I don't know, that there was a lot of studio influence on that last third. It was kind of Zack Snyderized, and it feels that way. It just turns into a CGI crap fest. But yeah, the first 2/3 of that movie I thought were really, really good. I was very disappointed in the second Wonder Woman. It again was just nonsensical. Nothing really made any sense to me. And making it a prequel, but then apparently it didn't actually happen because no one references that in the other. Yeah, it just did not work for me. And even Aquaman, like a lot of people really like Aquaman.
Oh, I saw Aquaman too. I forgot about that one.
And like a lot of people I know who are like, it was a lot of fun, but I thought it was okay at best. It just didn't work for me either. And I hate that because I love comics. I mean, I'm a huge Marvel fan. I'm in the bag for those movies, absolutely. But I grew up, like my first cartoon I can remember watching was Challenge of the Super Friends. I would come home every day after school. I'd watch G.I. Joe, Transformers, and the Super Friend cartoon, even the stupid ones with Marvin and Wendy and the Wonder Mutt. But I loved those. So DC heroes are in my blood. I want to love these movies. I'm not right now.
The first non-D&D game I ever made was inspired by Super Friends, actually. It's called Squad Goals. And it's basically, it was for Mythology Jam and Folklore Jam. So it's like women from world mythology and folklore teamed up for like a cartoon superhero style game. And I was like, it's very Super Friends.
And that's great. Like I want a Super Friends cartoon. Like that would be, or a movie. I mean, hell, even a cartoon would be fantastic. That's kind of what I would be after. But all right, well, enough of that. We will move into the first of our improv games, and this is called 10 Things. And the idea here is that we will take turns prompting each other to try to create a list of 10 things that match the prompt. The goal here is more of immediacy over accuracy. So a fast list of 10 is better than a good list of 10. But you are the guest, so would you like to prompt me first, or would you like to be prompted first?
You prompt me first.
Okay. So you mentioned that you like Super Friends, or at least you have some history with that. So give me 10 DC characters that you would like a movie made by someone other than Zack Snyder.
Oh, okay. Poison Ivy.
What?
A better Catwoman movie.
2.
Let's see. Oh, I the first person I thought of was Joker, but I don't want another fucking Joker movie. Sorry. The Penguin.
3.
Let's have more Wonder Woman. She's great.
4.
Let's have Giganta.
5.
Let's have Cheetah is just a movie, so I guess not. Yeah, better Cheetah. Better Cheetah movie. I would like Supergirl,
7.
Crypto the dog,
8.
and Flash can get a movie.
9. One more, unless I miscounted. So maybe
okay. Oh, yeah. Let's do 10. I would like a John Stewart Green Lantern.
Oh, that would be amazing. 10. Yay. Those were, in fact, 10 things. All right. Thank you so very much for that. And then I'll just quickly mention, if you have not watched it, the Harley Quinn cartoon on HBO Max was
I've been meaning to watch that.
It was one of the 2 best things I watched in all of 2020. It absolutely was incredible. So, all right. Guygar68 joining as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. I really appreciate having you here. All right, so Jessica, so now you get to give me a prompt for 10 things.
10 things. Okay, I will say, since you said you've been rereading a lot of fantasy, give me 10 fantasy magic wielders.
Whew. Wow, okay. Man. My mind just went back. So obviously there's Elminster. I'll go fantasy, Forgotten Realms. Mickey Mouse from Fantasia. Elsa from Frozen. I guess that counts. Oh man, fantasy. Well, there's oh my God, what's this? Rand al'Thor from Wheel of Time, of course. What other fantasy have I read?
You could just name Wheel of Time characters.
I could. It's not Terry Goodkind's the author. It's the Book of Swords trilogy. Call something or whatever. Whatever his face is. Richard Rahl. That's it. What's some other good fantasy? I'm trying to look around. I don't have my books here, but I'm looking over as if I have books there that would tell me anything. Gandalf, of course. Got to have Gandalf in there. And Saruman. Is it Rastif the Brown?
Radagast?
Radagast, that's the one. Okay, fantasy. Man, why am I blanking so hard? Randall Flagg, again, Stephen King. He's a bad guy. And there's also Martin, and there's the Man in Black. I think that's 10.
That was 11.
Oh, yay! Well, I think Martin and the Man in Black are the same person. It gets weird, okay. So maybe. Yay, that in fact was 10 things. And then Geiger comes in with Mordenkainen, which, would have been a good one as well. Yeah. All right, so now we're going to move into used books. And this is sort of like what I call the meat and potatoes of the show. And the idea here is that Jessica is going to share with us a game that you played in or you ran. And we're going to try to maybe pull out some nuggets of wisdom, maybe things that went really well that you have tried to carry forward and keep doing because they worked. Or maybe you experimented and tried something and it failed spectacularly. And you're like, you know what? Not going to do that again. Or if I do it again, I'm going to do it differently. So do you have a particular game or campaign you'd like to share with us tonight?
Yeah. A Clockwork Vines campaign that I was in that is basically Honey and Dice runs it, and it is sort of Call of Cthulhu.
Okay.
But set, what did she call it? Floral steampunk. It was set in Gaslight era England, late Victorian England. And at the time it was on Eris Savad's channel. We're coming back for a second season, and I think it's going to be on a different channel. But I was going to talk about the session 0 for that with character creation, but I just thought of something different.
Take a drink.
That I wanted to talk about.
Oh, of course. It's your show at this point, so you can talk about whatever you would like.
So how Honey ended every session is with what she called an epilogue, where basically she goes to every character after a climax, at a break where you would end a session, and asks what is your character thinking right now as they're doing this? Or in this moment, what is your character doing for the next 5 minutes? And did that to every person. And that was how we ended, which I loved.
Okay. So was this your first experience with like a structured version of that where a DM or GM would hand over, I would even say like some sort of like, not really narrative control, but more of like an introspection of,
Yeah.
we're bringing to the surface what is normally in maybe like in your mind, you might think of what your player or your character's thinking, but it's like a personal solo version of the game. And in this case, you're
Hmm.
bringing it to the surface. Is that the first time you had experienced that, or was it more of like the formality of it, where you did it? Everybody got a turn around the table that stood out to you.
It was the way that we like ended. Well, first, it was one of the first times that I've had everybody going around and doing something like that. Like I've had GMs hand over narrative control, and saying something like, "Oh yeah, you're going to this building. What does it look like?"
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. Or if you're meeting a player character's family, asking like, "What are your parents like? What is your house like?"
Right.
That's an easy way to give player control. But or I run Bluebeard's Bride every week and always asking like, "What are you most frightened of happening right now?
Yeah.
Here's how it's worse," kind of thing, is a mechanic in the game. But this was the first time that I had seen or experienced an inner monologue for each character, and as a way of closing a session,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. It's saying like, this is the scene, like you were all having lunch together and we're going to fade out, but what's going through each of your minds, like snapshot in this scene.
Right.
And it made it so much more memorable,
Mm-hmm.
from like when you would come back the next week and say like, this is what we were doing. And as we went on, some players would get really creative. Some players would like sing a song. They were like, "Oh, I have this song in my head and this is how it goes." Or like, "Oh, I'm writing this poem based on what we experienced." And other players would like, some were processing the events that transpired to help cement
Mm-hmm.
them. It was just a very cool experience.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of that both as a player and as a GM, but I've never been in like a truly structured version where it's like at the end of every session. I do really like that as I would say like a framing device
Mhm.
to how has this session changed you, and
Yeah.
how are we going to maybe go into the next session, like what is top of mind. And again, kind of going back to that game I was working on, like almost like a TV show where you kind of have those, oh, I guess, like at the end of the episode usually people might be sitting around a table or talking or whatever the genre is, and sometimes they'll give you just like a little nugget that's not quite like a cliffhanger, but it's like, oh, that's a thread we're going to pick up next time. And this would be a great place for those players to say, I can't let this go. I'm still thinking about this. And as the GM, that would be like, that's amazing for me to be able to know, okay, I know this is something you're interested in. Absolutely want to make sure that when we pick this up next time, that we have a moment to focus on that. Uh, but it's an interesting way of doing it, because I've done the thing where at the end of a session, I'll say, like, what do you think you're going to do next week?
Yeah.
It's more like above the table. Okay, we talked about tonight, you might go to the temple, you might try to track down this, you might go to the prison, talk to the guards. What do you think you're going to do, so that I can prep for where I think they're going? But making it part of the game where we actually are still in a character's head, I think is a really cool idea. Have you done that elsewhere now in other?
I totally stole it.
Okay.
And I stole it for a Monarchies of Mao campaign that actually Honey was in. And so she just gave me this look when I first did it. And I was like, hey, you know what? It's a really good idea. And I
Yeah.
love it. And I'm stealing it.
So do you think, other than doing it like at the end of the session, like would it be as effective or just different to do it at the beginning of the session, or like the middle, like maybe right before or after like a bathroom break or something at a convention game? Or do you think there's something about it being at the end that makes it more impactful?
I think it could be very cool doing it like maybe when you meet a major NPC
Hmm.
kind of thing, like like if someone's been talked about a lot and you finally meet that person and they're described, like, what are you thinking? Or right before you meet them, like, what do you hope this will be like? Or sort of like that sort of thing to gauge where they are.
Hmm.
Um, Coming back from a bathroom break, that could be a great way to get into it at a
Hmm.
con.
I think so. I think it's because I've done those things where like we'll do like a little improv exercise, right before the game starts, and 10 things type of a thing to kind of get you
Mm-hmm.
in that mode. But trying to get back into a character, particularly at a one shot where maybe that character isn't even fully fleshed out in your mind yet, even
Yeah.
halfway through the game. I think that could be very valuable as well. And one aspect of that I think is kind of interesting is, again, I've talked about this a little bit before, but I played in a con game once that was really bad. It was just bad.
I'm
No
sorry.
one, it happens. The DM was very new. This was a system they've always wanted to play, but they didn't really know the system. So again, they were trying to learn. I completely understand all that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that happened is that my character kind of got just off on their own and didn't get picked back up for like a very long time.
That's tough.
It is, but I'm the type of player that I want everyone to have a good time. So I wasn't going to raise my hand and force spotlight on me. Other people seem to be enjoying the game. So I did this little role play exercise where I spent about 45 minutes. I came up with this whole adventure that my character had that was off screen. No one else knew what was happening. I was like, I stole someone's car. I basically, driving through the town, evading police. This whole big thing was happening that never actually happened for anyone else at the table
Except you.
except for me. But it was still a lot of fun. So, when we got back together, my character finally came back in. I just threw off a couple lines and threw down somebody's car keys, and no one knew what was going on. But to me, it was like this perfect little moment, and that's got me thinking about how, even in a social game like a role-playing game, there are certain aspects that are still internal. And then unless you actually bring them out, they will always be internal. And, I think about what did my character do when we weren't together? But in this case, what is my character thinking? I think that's a very interesting thing to get out. Now, I guess my question is, with everyone listening, was it still considered to be internal, where I didn't actually know that your character was thinking that, so my character shouldn't act on it? Or was it up table knowledge that, this character is suspicious of this person or not?
For us, it was still internal.
Okay.
But there was, I know there was one character who was playing a double life. Basically, he was a spy, and none of us knew until the final episode. So he kept it for his inner monologue. He kept it in. He was a British agent of the crown who was pretending to be a German lawyer, and he did his inner monologue in his German accent and was still acting like the lawyer. So when he was like, "Oh yes, I'm actually in Her Majesty's service," we were like, "What?" in the finale. But for the rest of us, who weren't playing necessarily secretive characters, we would never act on any knowledge that we'd gained from that, but it was just a little glimpse into what everybody was thinking.
That's very interesting. I love that as an idea as the GM, but I just wonder if there is not in a better way, but a different way so that characters can act on it.
Yeah.
And if again, I don't know if that would be better or worse or not, but that's just my thought is there a way to do something similar where, you take a moment and everyone gets a moment to shine, but it's not internal thoughts. It's more Jessica, your character in the past we've established is not trusting. How do you now feel about meeting this NPC who says, come with me if you want to live, type of a thing?
Yeah.
I don't know if it would work as well. It may not be as seamless. It may not be as tidy as just what is your character thinking. But I do like the idea of trying to give people a way to present something that might be internal to make it part of the game.
Yeah. And I think you'll also get into differences between home games and streamed games. Especially starting with the pandemic, almost all of my games have been streamed games for the last year and a half at this point. And my home games sort of fell apart because people weren't as comfortable with online play. So the way I think people respond to that on a streamed game is going to be very performative. Whereas in a home game, they might be more revealing of actually what their character is feeling or going through, as opposed to this will reveal what my character's going through, but also the audience will really like it if I do this.
Right.
Which is a different.
It's
a different vibe when you're streaming.
It is to a point, and this is also something I've kind of been dealing with or thinking through as someone who does a lot of games that are streamed, but also a lot of games that are not. Is I truly believe that starting to run games that I knew would be for an audience has made every game I run more fun.
Yeah, I believe that.
Because when you're trying to craft a game that will be fun to listen to, it's generally fun to play also.
Yeah.
So I definitely think there's a lot of techniques that maybe people think are for streaming or for podcasting, which we do more of that. But there's nothing keeping you from doing those just in your home game, because you still have an audience, but it's just your table. It's the other players. And anything that comes out that everyone gets to experience and enjoy, I think is basically a net plus. Most of the time. I'm sure there's exceptions. But for the most part, like if I give insight into what my character is thinking, whether it's through this technique or just I tell everybody I'm having a moment and I'm just going to talk out loud, whatever the case may be, I just think that's good in general terms, because then it gives other things for people to bite on. I think role playing, we have this character that we're trying to inhabit, but and if you imagine there's a camera watching what we're doing, the only thing that anyone sees is what we do. But as a normal person, I can tell you that what I do versus what I think, it's like 80-20. Like I have so many thoughts in my head about things that I might do, I think about doing, or I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do. But then, you're only going to see the ultimate decision. You're not going to see any of the processes about how I come to that decision. And particularly in a game like a role-playing game, I think trying to have more of that, I don't think you can go all the way, but trying to get more of it out there, I think would be fun and interesting.
Well, and it's also fun because with all of my games, and I just said for all of my games, and I know for a fact we don't do this on Three Flanks, which is every Friday.
Many of your games.
For most of my games, we do an aftercare thing called Stars and Wishes, which is, if you don't know, it's where everyone goes around and says like your highlight, basically, which is your star, like your favorite part of the game, and then a wish is something that you would like to see in a future game.
Okay.
And it's a way to like highlight other players, say favorite things, and also for the GM to be like, okay, I need to bring this in, or they want more of this, so we'll move the plot in that direction, kind of, or find a way to bring that in. And it can be really fun when you do the epilogue followed by Stars and Wishes, because their character might be like, I hate that person so much and I never want to see them again. And then their wish might be like, bring back that character. I love them.
Right. Yes. And I think that's, again, one of the interesting things about the performative art like role-playing, where, I think many people by nature avoid drama. There are obviously exceptions, but for the most of us, we want to go along to get along. Yeah. But in a role-playing game, drama is what makes it fun. So, as Michael, I might be like, man, I really hope that we don't have to end up dealing with that. Or I should say my character may be like, oh, we don't do that. But Michael's thinking, it's going to be a ton of fun to see how bad things get. So let's jump in there. So, yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. It's almost like asking the same question to the player and then to the character, or to the character and then the player, to see where those differences lie. But that's an interesting way as well. I have done that. I haven't done it that again, formalized, but after most of my games, I usually will send messages to each person and say, hey, here's how I thought tonight went. This was a moment I thought was particularly cool, but is there any feedback you have? Is there anything, like, do you have an idea for a scene or a moment? And I don't always get a lot back, but I try to give people an avenue to say, yeah, I'd like to have a scene with my character. I'd like to have this or that. So I'll put in, but I haven't done it in that format. And I've also not done it at the table where everyone is still listening and talking. That might be an interesting way to approach that as well.
Yeah, I like doing it at the table if you can, because it gives players a chance to compliment each other.
Oh.
Like, I've played games, I think Mouse Guard does this, and we started integrating it into other games where, like, there's an MVP and they get, like, an extra point of experience if you're doing, like, XP leveling up. but it's like who did some really impressive role playing or who was the most helpful in a weird situation this time kind of thing. So when it's not milestone role playing that or leveling, that can be a fun thing to do. And just stars and wishes is kind of a way to do that when it is milestone, right? Like you're not getting XP for it, but you're still highlighting like, hey, that thing you did was really cool and I appreciate that.
Right. So I ran into this thing, and maybe I just get your take on this. Early on, like right as the podcast was starting, which is like 9 years ago, I was running a game with some people. We ended up doing an actual play, but I think this game was actually before that. And we were all friends. We all were friends inside the game, outside the game. We would hang out and do non-role playing game things together. So I feel like it's safe to say we had a pretty good and comfortable relationship.
Yeah.
And at the end of every game, I'd always say, feedback. I'd like to hear what you thought. And I almost never got anything. Everyone was like, yeah, it was great. And then, because I always hosted, they would go outside and they would be in my driveway.
Trash about you?
Not necessarily trash, but they would talk about the game for like 45 minutes without me. And they talk about what they liked and what they didn't like. Again, it wasn't always necessarily as bad, but there was something about them not being comfortable sharing that in front of me. And I don't know how, because I wanted to be part of that conversation, but I knew if I went out there, it would have stopped. So that's one of the reasons why I do it separately, because I have found, at least in general, people are more likely to give me feedback if it's not public, especially if it's negative. But I don't know, again, if it's focused on positives, like, who did great or, wishes, it might feel differently than if people thought they're being asked to give critical feedback in a public setting to the DM. I just don't know if there's a better way of approaching that necessarily.
I don't know. I've noticed with like with a lot of home games and where everybody's friends, I have noticed that with some of my games too, where people like don't want to say anything to their buddy because they're just like, no, you put in so much work, it's great. And then with each other later, they might be like, oh, well, it was kind of the same thing that we always do.
Right.
And you're like, I want to know that.
Right. Yes. Tell me. I'm the one that can change that. Like,
Like, what is the same thing that we always do? Because I will fix that.
Right.
But I feel like when you get like, it's not that I don't game online with my friends, because I definitely do when I'm friends with everybody I'm on a stream with for the most part. But like, I think it's different when you're, running a game for a con for sure, because you don't know those people. I run games for Magpie every week, and like sometimes my friends will sign up, but sometimes strangers sign up.
Right.
And if you're on a stream, then you're putting on like a show while you're still playing a game. So it's that weird dynamic. But if you're just with your buddies hanging out, like they don't always want to say something. Because you don't want to tell your friend like, hey, buddy, here's something you could be doing better in your life.
Right. But it's weird because I've had friends tell me I suck at things. Like they'll be like, yeah, you suck at that. So, but there's something about the performative nature of RPGs that there's like, they don't want to hurt people's feelings. Maybe because it's a creative, like if I was putting on a play, they wouldn't want to tell me my play sucks. But like if we're playing video games and they like just whip me, they'll absolutely trash talk about that. Or if we're watching football and my team's losing, they'll your team sucks type of a thing. There's something about that. Maybe that performative nature I think is a little bit different. So a couple things I would pull out here, and we certainly can keep going. But if you are the DM or the GM or whatever the title is, I found for con games, starting off with sort of an opening scene where you go around the table and you introduce your character to everybody, tell us a little bit about yourself. I found is a good sort of measuring stick to get an idea of who these people are as players. Because again, at a con game, you're going to have a wide variety of experiences and talent and just outgoingness, and you can very quickly see who. This is a person who is going to give a lot. Here's someone I'm going to have to maybe pull like taffy to get them involved. Here's the person who's just there because the game they wanted was canceled, and they're going to roll
with their friend.
Yeah, they're going to roll dice when it's time, but I don't need to worry about them otherwise. So I do try to do something at the very beginning to give me a okay, this helps me settle in my mind who's who for the rest of the game. I think that's very, very helpful. And then to the player side, if your DM is asking for feedback, try to give them something. critical. I always say positive feedback makes me feel better. Critical feedback makes me better.
Ooh, I
So
love
if
that.
someone's saying, give me feedback, try to give them something. You know, you can couch it as positive as you can, but literally as a DM, I put hours into trying to make this game fun for you. And if I'm failing, tell me, because I'll fix it. I'll try. I mean, I can't promise, but like I wouldn't do all this work knowing that you're not going to have a good time. So help me use my time more wisely, I guess.
You know who I have found will almost always give you like critical feedback is other game designers.
Mm.
Whenever I have done like aftercare and feedback time for fellow game devs, I remember, oh, was that I was running, it was one of my Magpie games, and one of them was like, oh, I took notes actually. And I was like, I love that.
Yes. Truly.
Like, tell me what I can do to make this game better, like for you if you come back, but also for everyone else who's going to play with me.
Right. Because I'm not going to just drop this. So you could be helping untold people have a better
Right.
experience by sharing the goods and the bad. Again, just like the whole point of this part of the show is to try to find things that went well that we can continue to do, as well as avoid things that maybe didn't go so well. So, you know, a little bit of both goes quite a long way. But thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else you'd want to touch on before we move to our next segment?
No, I was glad that was helpful.
Absolutely. And as always, we'll throw it out to the audience again, those watching now or in the future. If you have any other examples of this, you know, similar or different or went well, went terrible, you know, share those in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter. You can tag me as well as Jessica. And again, maybe together we will be better next time. And that's kind of the whole point of this. Okay, so now we get to go to everyone's favorite part of the game, which is our Where Have My Fingers Been improv game. Sadly, New York Tater had to bail. He works a ton, particularly now with the pandemic. He works for the government and does a lot of stuff with that. So, but this is like his favorite part. So maybe he'll catch the YouTube later. But the idea here is that we're going to create a short scene between two people using our fingers as puppets to represent them. If you want to be Scott and bring in a third because he's actually really good at this, and I think he's a jerk when he does it, but that's up to you. But so we will prompt one another for some sort of situation or location where our two people are interacting. Jessica, you're the guest. Would you like to prompt me first, or would you like to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay. It's also very important you have to sing the song. So it's Where Have My Fingers Been?
My fingers been.
I said, Where have my fingers been?
My fingers been.
Your fingers are who? Your fingers are in line to join a convention game for a game you've never played before at some point in the future when it's safe to get together for conventions again.
Okay. Stop looking over my shoulder. Stop it. Oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Back up. Have you played this game before? Yeah, it's the best game. Liar, you haven't played this game.
She brought in the third.
You haven't played this game? Why is it your business? Back up! That's where my fingers
That's where my fingers have been. Someone's a close talker.
I hate getting bumped in line of conventions.
Oh, it is the worst. All right, so now you get a chance to give me a prompt for where my fingers have been. But first, again, I have to sing the song. So,
Sing the song.
Where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
Your fingers are going on a roller coaster.
You know, this is actually the worst part, just the anticipation, because, you know, it's like it takes forever and it's like really slow. And then there's that moment right where you get to the top and then it sort of like stops. But then would you shut up? Oh! I want to ride it again. Me too. I love roller coasters. And that's where my fingers have been. Yay!
Yay!
All right, so now we're going to move on to cryptozoology, and this is where we're going to talk about a monster, often D&D, but not always. Talk about maybe why we like this monster so much, some ways we have used a monster in the past, and potentially brainstorm some ways that we could use this monster in the future. Jessica, you are the guest. Do you have a monster you would like to talk about tonight?
Let's talk about hags, baby.
Hags! Woohoo! So looking at the 5e monster manual, it's on page 176 and 177. We have the entry on hags. We have
so beautiful.
A couple different versions. So we have just sort of hags in general. Then we have a green hag. On the next pages, we have night hags and sea hags. So we got all kinds of hags. So what is it about the hag that interests you? Like, why do you want to talk about them tonight?
Oh, I love hags. I feel like I'm going to be a swamp witch when I grow up.
Well, we have to have goals.
Yeah, now that my migraines let me know when it's going to rain in advance, like I feel like I'm on my way there.
Yeah.
I have always kind of loved them since I was a kid. Like, well, I don't know, Maleficent's not really a hag, but even the evil queen from Snow White, like I loved her and was also afraid of her.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get older, from hags to riches, when you start reading like mother maiden crone archetypes and I studied like history of fairy tales and all sorts of stuff like that. And you get into like how it's a way to villainize older women or fear of them and fear of wise women, fear of powerful women. You get into witch trials and stuff like that. But basically, hags are older women who kind of don't care what other people think about them and have a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very fun in D&D because they're low-level enemies, but they can seriously mess up your players because they're manipulative and they always have schemes and they can shape change. So they can be anybody to varying degrees. Like the night hag is going to be the best at being other people. The sea hag can transform into an ugly person. The green hag can transfer to anybody, but it does, or transform into anyone, but it doesn't hold up to like physical touch. But just I love their vibe. And I think the things they do are really cool. And I've used all of them with players. I've written a lot of stuff with hags. One of the first things I ever wrote was part of a collaboration that was called Grandmother Kirkbessam's Book of Hags, where we just wrote a whole bunch of other hags.
Never enough.
There's so much fun things you could do with them. But I remember running a stream that was Princesses Save Dragons, and it was all not Disney officially. Princesses fighting not Disney villains. And they encountered a coven that was a night hag, a green hag, and a sea hag. And even though the night hag is the most powerful and was doing the most physical damage to them, they hated the green hag more than I have ever seen them hate anyone else, because she was so manipulative. She could imitate the voices of people they loved. She could appear like people they loved. And it messed up their heads to the point where they were like, I don't care about these other two, but she needs to die.
Nice.
And I just love hags. I think they're fun.
So, yeah, I'm nowhere near as educated in the real world as you are, obviously, and I have used hags sparingly in my experience with D&D, so there's probably some details I'm going to get wrong. But from what I know of them, they're often accompanied or work with like will-o'-the-wisps to lead travelers astray, get them lost into like swamps, and then basically consume them. There's also, I think, classically they steal children.
That's how they make more hags. Yeah, they eat a baby.
Eating babies.
And then give birth to a baby hag.
Cycle of life. Nothing wrong with that.
Like you do.
But one of the things that I'm, again, familiar with in like the D&D tropes is the classic illusion of like the damsel in distress or even like the child. So like, help me. And, the players come to the rescue and then, it's a hag. But I feel like at this point, most players, unless they're brand new to any sort of role-playing game, if you present them the out of place, particularly if it's a young woman, the beautiful woman in distress, but you could gender swap that and make it completely a dude or an old man or old woman, whatever. My players are going to be instantly suspicious. So is there a way to still get that reveal of you're trying to rescue someone who's actually leading you deeper into trouble without making it obvious what you're doing? Any thoughts on that?
Well, you can change who they're disguised as. So one thing that I've done is my players were looking for someone who had been captured. It turned out that they thought the person had been abducted by hags. It turned out the hags were also looking for this person to abduct them, because it turned out it was a juvenile dragon, and they wanted the dragon's power, because everybody was looking for dragons in this campaign. But they knew the name and the approximate age of the person they were looking for. So the hag appeared to them as that person and was like, I just escaped, you have to help me. So because they were looking for that person, they were like, oh, okay, because the helpless young maiden did not work.
Right.
Because they were like, why don't you get yourself out of here?
So rather than being just the generic lost in the swamp person, by making them a specific person, and in this case, specifically someone they were already looking for, you have sort of bypassed their natural suspicions of players and meeting someone in a swamp.
Also, you can do cool stuff with dancing lights. Like, you can have the dancing lights take the form of a person, right? And it won't look like a human, but if it's someone who's like, help, I'm caught in a magical trap.
Okay. Completely not completely unrelated, but the first thing that popped in my head is that classic situation where you have two versions of the same person, and then in the movies it's like, tell me something you wouldn't know. But I like the idea of that, but where the players are wrong and they end up killing the wrong person, and they actually they think the hag is the right person, so they save them. So by having two of them presented, they assume one of them is the doppelganger, in this case a transformed hag, but you give enough information to the hag so they seem like the right one. So that might get over their suspicion because you've already presented them with the false one, but the false one was actually the real one. Or you could even do like a two hag situation.
Right.
So they kill one, maybe
and the other one's also a hag.
But the other one's also a hag. So that could work. But one of the things I always try to do is I don't like monsters that are just bag of hit points, where it's like, okay, we hit it with our stick until it's dead. So I kind of like the idea of making the hag someone they have to interact with. So it's not this surprise, I'm actually the hag. It's like, we have to go talk to this hag or this whole coven of hags.
Yeah.
And then because we need something that only they can provide, but how do we navigate this without not just becoming lunch? Is it that we're just strong enough, or is it we have a knowledge, we have a thing, we have an escape plan so that we're going to get into this bad situation and get out? I'm thinking like Beastmaster, when he has to go speak to the witches. That doesn't work out well for anybody. I think Clash of Titans also similarly, like with the glass eye. So can you think of any situations, and again, these are just off the top of your head, or if you have examples of times where you've used hags as hags, not as the deceptive version?
Right. Well, the fun thing with hags is that because they're manipulative and always scheming, they're really good at getting communities on their side. So you might be like, well, we're going to go kill the hag. This is come up in Uncaged all of the time, where the people are going to go, do away with the hag. And it turns out that the community is like, no, the hag actually helps us a lot. Like, she's our midwife. We have better health. And like, once in a while we have to sacrifice someone on the harvest moon. But, that's a small price to pay for like a thriving community with really good crops. And so if you need to get to the hag, you have to go through an entire town. And a lot of players don't want to do that.
Fair. I like the reverse of that, where they kill the hag, they come into town thinking they're heroes,
And everybody's like,
but before they announce, like, they don't hold the head up, but they just talk, they find out very quickly that everyone here in the town loves the hag, and then they're just like keeping on the DL that they've killed the hag.
Yeah.
And then they come back obviously like a year later, and the town's falling apart, and like there's people hate them they just hate these people because they thought they did the right thing. But I'm kind of that
the
DM
town hires them and is like, help, our goddess has been slain, and they're like, oh no.
Oh yes, we need to figure out who killed our hag mistress.
Like our arch druid.
Yeah, we'll look right into that. We'll be right back. Oh, excellent. All right. So give me other ways. Is there anything hags want other than, like, obviously victims? Knowledge, secrets, maybe something that the players could give them that they could trade for?
So it depends on the hag, and according to like the lore in like D&D, green hags want to mess with people. Like they want to make their fae. So they want to make deals, and they want to make sure that the deals are always in their favor and they come out on top. Night hags collect souls. So that's why they want to kill evil people and keep their souls in a bag. Sea hags want to destroy anything beautiful. Anise hags like breaking things for the most part. They're not very magic-y, but they are like 8 or 9 feet tall, and they like punching things. And they like luring children astray. Remember, that's one of their big ones. They like corrupting the innocent. And burr hags like eating people. They like luring them out to the freezing cold and then eating them. So there's some, like, I don't know. I think hags are fun. Some of them like want, you could do it so that maybe they want praise, like maybe they want to be seen as a goddess, maybe they want knowledge, maybe they want to kill a dragon. They live forever, and maybe they have beef with a kraken or something. They can't defeat a kraken. They're like CR4.
You're right.
But they can certainly send adventurers to defeat a kraken by not telling them it's a kraken.
Well, of course not. Yes,
just a giant octopus.
Yeah. It's just a sea creature. Don't ask about that.
Yeah.
So now my thought is trying to marry up the town or the village with a hag. So it's like you have a hag. You're like, listen, hag, we have the perfect place for you. So why don't you come here? Because we have this town that they're run down. Their life sucks. You could probably like set up shop and become their goddess and, treat them fairly well. You don't want to go blow through them. They're a resource. But yeah, maybe every year we get a harvest moon sacrifice. All you got to do is, when they get consumption, you take care of it, whatever. So is there some sort of way that's the adventure? That's the goal, is you have a town that's about to collapse
and needs a hag.
Maybe not doesn't need a hag, but they need something, and a hag is what we present to them as well. That there's this swamp, 2 counties over where things are going weird. So maybe that's the solution, because I don't know that you could just say that's the adventure, bring a hag here, but those are the 2 problems. You have a hag that's not wanted, and you have a village that could use the services of a hag.
A magical person.
And they might be willing to deal with the negatives. And so that creative solution is, why don't we fix both problems by bringing them together? That might be hard to manipulate and not make it obvious what you're doing, but that could be a very fun and satisfying adventure if you can leverage those properly.
I think if you tossed in a couple other magical creatures so that you could give the players options. So it's not just a hag, but like maybe... why do I keep thinking dragons? Or maybe up in the mountains, there's a bunch of winter wolves going to do better. So yeah, maybe there's like a juvenile white dragon. Maybe in the water, there's a Morlock or something, and a Morlock wouldn't do great in a town, but they're like, well, if they bring the town to the deep ocean,
right.
And you could, if depending on how the players like get along with the beasties, or see what the town is willing to tolerate.
Yeah, that could be like a humorous campaign where they bring in a magical creature and they're like, nope. And so then they kill that one. Then they go out and they search for another one. this one, nope, kill that one, and then you go back. Eventually, you settle on the correct level of how evil of an evil overlord are we willing to deal with.
The town's like, we were thinking a unicorn.
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
well, you got a hag.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely were not like our wires were crossed there. But yeah, that's cool. I definitely, as I was kind of mentioning before we went live, there might be a hag making an appearance in a game that I'm running every other Tuesday on Twitch. Perhaps, maybe, we shall see. But as always, I like to throw it out to the audience, those of you watching now or anyone watching or listening in the future, if you have any just cool hag stories, a way that you used a hag or a campaign you played in had a reveal or a hag, please share with us. Again, hit Jessica and I up on Twitter, drop in some comments in this episode, give us your stories on how hags have been used in your games particularly well, so that more people can learn about them and use them, because I do think they're a fun, and they're kind of a traditional thing. Like, I think every good D&D campaign at some point has a hag in it.
Michael, all hag stories are cool stories.
True. That is true. Inherently so. All right. So at this point, we're going to kind of get to the end of the show where we like to open it up to Q&A. So anyone who's watching now that's in chat, if you have any questions for Jessica or I, please let us know. It doesn't have to be role-playing game related. Makes the most sense if it is. And we always reserve the right not to answer a question. But if you have something you'd like to ask Jessica or I, please do. There's a bit of delay. So while we're waiting for chat to catch up, Jessica, here's the time. Plug away. What have you got? What do you want to talk about? And again, put your socials back in there as well.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Miss_Jess03, but my name will look like AngryNerdGirl, which is what it is on Twitch. You can find me every Friday on Twitch when I run Three Flings, the adventures of three tieflings through the Uncaged Anthology. And next week, I have, I'm co-writer for a thing coming to the DMs Guild called Playing Possum, and it is playable possums, skunks, armadillos, and I'm forgetting one. Oh no, what are badgers as well. So there's NPCs as well as character classes, and that's coming next week. And then also all my stuff is on my website, JessicaMarkhamWrites.com, and I realized like I have 10 things that are waiting to come out, but most recently I have a bunch of stuff coming out with Cubicle 7. So look for the Age of Sigmar Soulbound Bestiary, and I think that's the soonest one. So check that out, because I wrote some monsters for that.
Very cool. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube or listening, there will be links to all this stuff in the show notes to make it easier for you to find either of us or any of the things that Jessica mentioned. Samki mentioned that he had a group of hags that kept cloning the PCs, and then we're sending them out after the PCs. That sounds like
I love that.
Yes. So as for myself, again, Michael at the RPG Academy, and pretty much everything I do can be found if you search the RPG Academy, you're going to find me. Hopefully, if you find someone else, let me know, because that's a problem. But right now, every other week on Tuesdays, I'm running a 13th Age campaign called Shadow Spawns, or is it Shadow Spawns? We don't know yet. That's what we're trying to figure out. And then every other Wednesday, I'm doing Detention live, like tonight. Tonight was on the off Wednesday, so next week we will have another episode of Detention. And then in addition to that, just about every weekday I play video games. Right now I'm playing Dragon Warrior 2, kind of revisiting some of the old games I played as a kid. As I like to say, I'm not going to teach you how to play the games. I'm not going to give you any secrets or inside information. It is just me reliving my childhood playing these games I loved when I was like 8, 9 years old. And then I also have started a painting show. Again, I'm not going to teach you how to paint minis because I'm terrible at it, but I like doing it. So I'm like the Bob Ross of painting minis if Bob Ross was named Michael and was bad at painting minis. But I'm having a lot of fun doing it. Right now I'm working through the Marvel United Cool Mini or Not game. So a lot of the Marvel heroes and villains that I'm going through. I don't see any questions yet, but we'll give one last call out. So again, if you have any questions for Jessica or I, please now throw them out there. We like answering questions, so this is your chance to ask something. Yeah, absolutely. Ask us things. So one last time, again, what was the Twitter handle for you, Jessica?
At Miss_Jess03.
03. Excellent. Again, at the RPG Academy. I will quickly mention, I also do a podcast about the show Smallville. When we got into quarantine, it was the first show that I went back and rewatched all 10 seasons on Hulu. And
I've never seen it.
Oh, I'm always looking, because we rotate co-hosts every week for every episode. So if you would like to be a co-host on Smallville, all you have to do is watch one episode. But it's called Farm to Fable. We are currently near the end of season 2. I'm recruiting co-hosts for season 3. The plan is to do basically all 10 seasons every episode, and I'm having a ton of fun doing this. Right now, I think we're up to like maybe 40, 50 people listening to each episode, so it's a very small show. But I have a few people that are, again, they're, religiously listening. They're sending me emails, and, I think we're up to 15 reviews on iTunes. It's absolutely a ton of fun. I really, really enjoy it. It's a bad show in some aspects, and I've actually got feedback that I'm sometimes too negative because I get focused on the nitpicky stuff, but I do love the show. I wouldn't do this podcast if I didn't absolutely love the show overall, but it's a ton of fun. So Sumkey has asked, so what is the favorite story you have crafted for a game or a PC background? So Jessica, any particular PC's backstories that you've created, or maybe the story of a game that you would share?
Yeah. I think my favorite PC background I ever came up with was for a one shot, actually. I'm usually the perma GM, so I don't often put much thought into my PCs. I'm just like, what class do you need? I will fill in and be that person. But I was playing my first ever Paladin, and it was basically for a game that I was playing, a game that I had written, but I wasn't GMing it.
Oh, wow.
So I did not want to be optimized to just, it was a mystery campaign or a mystery game, and I didn't want to spoil everything. So I wanted to be moderately helpful if things went south, but also not good at what I was doing. So it was a ghost story. So I was like, I'll be a paladin, but I'll be a redemption paladin. So I don't really have much turn undead. And I decided that her backstory was she was a pirate captain who had fallen in love with a cleric. And she was still an atheist and did not believe in the gods, but she believed wholeheartedly in her girlfriend and was going the path of redemption to be worthy of making her girlfriend her wife. So that was her thing. And I had a lot of fun with her. That was Scarlett O'Bonney.
Scarlett O'Bonney. Oh, excellent. Gagar68 mentions that not a fan of Smallville. It's got some problems. Absolutely. I'm with you on that. But I particularly enjoyed the teen angsty drama, the focus on Clark versus on Superman. And, it came out 2002, 2003. I think that was like right around the time I got my first job. I moved out, I got married. I was on, kind of living on my own. It was like our show that me and my wife would watch together because it was one of the few superhero things that was on at the time. So I have a nostalgia and a love for that show. But again, a lot of times I go really nitpicky on things that do not make sense. But yeah, the Christopher Reeve episode, actually the episode
Christopher Reeves was on Smallville?
He was on 2 episodes. We just released last week the episode that he was on first. He plays sort of I'm going to use Elon Musk, like this billionaire technology guru, though not like evil. No, not necessarily that. He in the show, he plays Virgil Swan, who's like a tech billionaire who dedicates his life and his money to trying to find evidence of life in outer space, or extraterrestrial life. And he is able to give Clark some information that Clark didn't have about his heritage. So he kind of came on, and it was like a literal passing of the torch, having Christopher Reeve in the episode. It was very, very well done, but also very emotional, and it was a big turning point for Clark, because this is where he learned the name Krypton. And that he also learned that Krypton was destroyed. So Virgil Swan dropped some big information on him. So it was a really good episode of the show as well. It was, I grew up watching the Christopher Reeve. He was my Superman as a kid, so it was a big deal to see that as well.
I loved the Christopher Reeve movies, and I was hooked on Lois and Clark when I was a kid. I loved that show. So even though Dean Cain kind of sucks now, seeing him on Supergirl was really exciting for me. Like I watched the first season and a half of Supergirl, and seeing like Dean Cain and I'm blanking on her name right now, but the woman who played Supergirl in the Supergirl movie as her parents, and then seeing Linda Carter come on the show. I was like, I love this. I love when they do that.
Yeah, that's one thing I will say about the DC TV shows on CW, like Arrow, The Flash, is that they have a love for these stories, and they are trying their best to sort of bring things in.
Batman glass this whole time.
Oh yeah, Flash bringing in the guy, I can't remember his name, who played the Flash in the '90s, and making him the Jay Garrick, or not the Jay Garrick.
That's cool.
The other or Elseworld Flash. I can't remember his name right now. I'm blanking, but yeah. But I love when they do that, and it makes me feel like these are people who, again, I may not agree with the version, the stories they tell, but they do love these stories. They're not just like, hey, superheroes are cool. Like, they have a love for these stories. And actually, I don't know, have you seen Stargirl? Did you watch that at all?
No.
So I think it's on HBO Max now. I think it was on CW originally, and it's basically the Stargirl character. And I watched it with my boys, and they loved it. Like, and actually, it's definitely sort of that hero wish fulfillment. It's the young girl. And I think she's like 15. She finds out that she's the daughter of Starman, and she inherits his powers. There's a little bit of a mystery, so I won't spoil whether that's actually true, but that's what she thinks is true. But she does get his staff, and the opening, the opening 20 minutes is like the Justice League of America getting wiped out, or the Justice Society. They all get killed by the villains. And so this is 15 years later, and then she finds out that the villains have this plan, and she starts bringing all her friends together, and they become superheroes. It's total wish fulfillment, but it's actually got a lot of heart to it that I really enjoyed. But it also has these weird twists and turns where like people will just straight up murder someone else. So you're like, I'm a 15-year-old kid who is my best friend as a superhero. Holy shit, that guy just got murdered. So it's got some weird emotional turns, but I actually really, really enjoyed it. So I would highly suggest anybody who has any interest in these shows, check them out.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
And then I'll just quickly mention Army was probably one of my favorite characters I got to play. It was an actual play campaign we ran for a while. Unfortunately, like most of our campaigns, it just died because life got in the way. It was the first time I had played a female character in so many years. I grew up having a lot of bad experiences with people playing female characters because it was mostly just an excuse to be like a slut, basically.
Licentious, gross person.
Just gross. And, and I'll chalk it up more to immaturity. Again, I started playing when I was like 15. I'm sure I didn't handle it well as the DM either. But I was like, hey, I'm going to see if I can actually play a female character and not lean into the bad aspects of it. And I totally fell in love with this character. I had so much fun playing her. She had the most awful backstory I could think of. So her father had 6 boys and then wanted to try one more time. Had 6 girls. Wanted to try one more time for a boy and ended up having twins. So had a boy and a girl twin.
Oh, okay.
And could not afford to keep everybody. So Army was sent to live in an orphanage because they already had 6 girls. So Army grew up on a small island nation with her family that she saw because she went to live in the temple. So every Sunday for services, she would see her entire family march in, but she was not part of the family. So it was like the most tragic backstory, but where she wasn't actually an orphan because her parents were still alive. Yeah. And she was like very earnest. Like she was fine with that. She loved seeing her family. She had no resentment towards them. And I kind of said it was like almost like a Forrest Gump. I don't know if that's necessarily something I should say now, but she was just like earnest and simple and just always looked at the positivity in everything. And I just really loved playing her character. She was very much not an adventurer who kept getting thrown into these adventures, and it was a lot of fun. So if anyone's listening, Wrought Iron is a campaign. There's like 9 or 10 episodes. Fabulous, so much fun, but it just literally stops because the campaign just fell apart, unfortunately. So, all right, well, thank you everybody for watching. Some Key, Geigar, New York Tater. I saw some other numbers, so I'm guessing there were some people that might have jumped in for a few minutes. Maybe they checked out the show for the first time, or you're just lurking. That's cool. There's never any pressure to chat with us. I like it when people do, but if you just want to like watch and lurk, you do you. Jessica, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you had a good time. I hope you enjoyed your time here and playing our little reindeer games and the 10 things and the fingers and
This
everything.
was so fun. It was. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. If you want to come back in the future, I'd love to have you again. And truly, if you want to join Farm to Fable, we can talk off the air about that. But this show will go up on YouTube next week. It'll go up on audio only the week after. There's a much larger audience there, so hopefully we'll get some more people who will be able to check out your stuff, and you might see some people coming your way that way. But one last time, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Miss_Jess03. And you can find my Twitch at AngryNerdGirl. And you can find everything that I have ever written that is a game at JessicaMarkhamWrites.com.
Fantastic. And once again, I'll have those in the show notes for the YouTube and the audio only version. Thank you, everybody. We'll do the awkward wave out as I look for the stop streaming button. And hopefully we'll see you next week back here with another episode of Detention. Bye-bye.